This began as an honors option that I worked in Theater 257, which is Movement for the Performer. I worked with Haya in that class, and I had asked her about doing an honors option, and we started talking about my interest in Shakespeare movement specifically. One of the other faculty member of the theater said something to Haya about why don't you do, a Cal URI project, and we were like, okay, so we just kind of looked into it and jumped into it. And what we're doing is using multiple movement analysis systems or multiple frameworks for looking at movement and looking at how those contribute to effective acting movement in Shakespeare. We kind of wanted to move into maybe a less popular play, so we ended up on The Winter's Tale. So I'm seeing different performances of it around the country and then a film version of it, and coming up with a kind of an overall piece that summarizes the choices that I saw compared to how it read for me on stage, and then how that movement contributed to effective performance.
There's a little bit of a disconnect between what the scholarly community is doing and what the practitioners are doing. The Theater 257 class introduced some of these movement analysis systems, but sort of implicitly and not explicitly they were used as a tool for the actor to get more inside their bodies. And so Beth had a brief introduction to some of these concepts in 257 and started to use them in her honors option, but now she's really expanding her exploration of what are the different movement methodologies and systems that she can apply. And it's not a conversation that's really common in the scholarly community. That a lot of these methodologies are used for actor training and for studying more than for analyzing a production. So it's a little bit novel and exciting.
I found a lot about Shakespeare text analysis. Everybody likes to talk about what Shakespeare means. And then I found a lot about, then when you get into movement, just talking about movement in the classroom, different ways to move, different systems of movement. As I dug through it, I kind of found that there was a really good space for using those classroom exercises that we did in 257 and then applying those to watching a performance and seeing how those actually translate to real performance, because that's kind of the point of working on it in the classroom.
Shakespeare at its very heart and core is a very, very physical type of work in a very physical form, but talking about movement and talking about movement as a means of expression, for expressing emotion, for expressing character, for expressing relationships, is a tricky thing to talk about. How do we come up with a vocabulary that makes sense to an outside reader? So that's one of the things that we're exploring. I have a couple other majors, so I'm also pre-med. I'm learning so much more than just about theater, I'm learning how to research, I'm learning about conversation with professionals, and I appreciate the opportunity to use my science brain in theater. There's no way that you can tease apart the body and then what you do with your body and then what's going on in your mind. I'm just studying the human body from a bunch of different perspectives. We've very much set this up as Beth's project. It's Beth's project. I'm here to mentor and advise and sculpt and bounce ideas off and help work creatively on it, but it's very much Beth's project. But the thing that's really nice about it, and I think why we were able to take the jump from honors option into doing this Cal URI, is that it just so happens that there's quite a bit of complicity here, and that the Beth's areas of interest coincide really well with mine. I think both of us are in a role of two roles of teacher and learner, and that's a really exciting collaborative relationship to have.
Hopefully, once we've kind of compiled all these things and I met with a couple of the professionals that I mentioned, we would like to submit for publications. We hope that these applications can be used then back into smaller venues like education or outreach experiences. It's cool to be a part of the bigger part of theater, besides just on the individual level. I want to get cast in this show, working on how there's trends in movement, and there's popular stuff, and there's gimmicky stuff, and it's really cool that I can learn where those things are going, and I can kind of be a part of that, and then that almost translates to my smaller work. So then when I'm working on theater, if I audition for Shakespeare in the future, which I will, I can use that, I can talk about that and say, I've done work, I understand what goes into this work, not just memorizing my lines and doing it on my own. I really love it.